to be told by perfect strangers that your daughter's just been shot dead by New South Wales Police, that she was the girl that was broadcasted all over the news all day, you just can't accept that.
It was a man-to-man conversation. You're gone, why the hell did they have to shoot my daughter? Why did they shoot my daughter in the chest?
She was an upstanding citizen, a good human being, a loved daughter, sister.
Leesa and Ron Topic, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
It's always great to see you guys.
It's a pleasure to see you too, Gary.
I know the circumstances in which our lives crossed couldn't have been worse, but you always put a smile on my face when I see you guys.
Thanks.
Good things come from very horrific tragedies.
Yeah, and I don't think you guys realise how much of an inspiration you are, like dealing with the grief that you've dealt with, losing your daughter.
That's all we got, Gary.
Yeah.
That's all we got.
We do this for Courtney. She deserves no less.
Yeah.
She deserves to be remembered for the beautiful soul that she was, not necessarily the way that she passed away, although that's part of who she is and part of her story and our story now. But we're here to go forward and make a positive out of a really horrific tragedy.
Yeah. I was, and we were saying before we started, I was reluctant to ask you guys to come on the podcast because it's such a traumatic event that occurred where your 22-year-old daughter, never been in trouble with the police before, and you guys go to work one day and then you find out that she's been shot and killed by the police.
Absolutely made no sense then, makes no sense now. We went to work and it was a normal day. It was just an ordinary day. And by that evening, our lives had been changed forever.
Yeah. And it is forever, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I know recently it would have been her birthday.
Yep. She on 27th of February, she would have turned 31. As a family, we went out. That's what we do, and we go to dinner and remember Courtney and talk about Courtney. I know it's 8 years on, but that is who we are, and that's how Courtney's still part of our lives in everything we say and do.
Yeah, I get a sense of that. Just to explain how our paths crossed. When Courtney was shot and killed by police, I was at homicide, and a detective inspector at homicide. When someone is killed in those circumstances, it's referred to as a critical incident, and a homicide inspector has to oversee or lead the investigation into the circumstances leading up to the shooting and what happened during the shooting. And that's when we became involved. And I got to say, you guys left an indelible impression on me.
At the end of the day, Gary, we know Courtney. We know that Courtney was just Miss Average, from a family of Mr. and Mrs. Average, and to be told by perfect strangers that your daughter's just been shot dead by New South Wales Police, that she was the girl that was broadcasted all over the news all day, you just can't accept that.
Can't even comprehend.
Still can't comprehend it. It's still like a nightmare that we wish we would wake up from. We know we won't. So we have to, in her memory, go forward as best as we can.
Yeah. Something that stuck in my mind, speaking to both of you, and in such traumatic circumstances, but I remember you saying to me, Ron, and it was a man-to-man conversation, you're gone, why the hell did they have to shoot my daughter? Why did they shoot my daughter in the chest? And I think the conversation sort of flowed onto there. They could have crash tackled her. What's going on? She was a young girl. That stuck in my mind, Ron, and it was a difficult question something to answer to. Like that was in the early days of the investigation, but I know that's how you were looking at it. Like you're a knockabout sort of bloke. Here's a young girl and she's been shot in the chest by police.
That's look, we've got a large family, a large circle of friends, and even a larger band of associates, right? And everybody who comes into our path, all, like you said, blokey blokes, show me condolences for my daughter's death and looked me in the eye and said they didn't have to shoot her. That's it. They just look me eye to eye, and I can't help seeing my pain in their eyes when they're looking at me, right, and engaging with me, and they just purely say they didn't have to shoot her. It was so public. There was so much footage and eyes on the incident, that people just can't get past the fact that a gun was discharged, a bullet was fired, and it was a fatal shot to the chest. It's like,
and all within 41 seconds of officers arriving on scene.
Yeah, we're going to break down the incident, how it occurred, and the fact, and I think that is significant. You mentioned that, Leesa, how quickly a situation escalated. 41 seconds from the time the first police officers arrived at the scene to the time that Courtney was shot dead.
Absolutely. Where was the assessment of the situation? Yeah, there should have been a vastly different outcome.
Leesa, the thing that sticks in my mind in my conversation with you, that you told me that you left her a note, the last communication that you had with her, that make sure you hang the washing out. And something about that, I think it's just such typical of a household.
It is. And obviously, a few years afterwards, that note was returned to me with some of Courtney's belongings. I have that note at home.
Yeah.
And it was just, I was off to work. She wasn't that day. And please hang the washing out. Everyone's living busy lives. She worked part-time.
Yeah.
She'd worked the night before. And we all had to pitch in and do our best so that we could function. And that's what we all did. And she did hang the washing out that morning. Triple pegged, like I said to her, because I was always worried, I didn't want our underwear flowing into somebody else's backyard if it was a bit windy. So she did exactly what I asked.
Great motherly advice. I think why that stuck with me so much when you were saying that to me is it's such a typical household. You can picture the household, and then going from that, and let's kudos to Courtney. She did hang the washing out day. She followed her mum's instructions. But then within a couple of hours, she'd been shot and killed.
Again, it makes no sense. I was at work, which was 10 minutes up the road at the local Catholic primary school where I worked. And it was afternoon or recess afternoon tea. It was about just before 2, and we were going to have our break, coffee, biscuit, whatever. And one of the young teachers came in and said, there's been a fatal shooting at Hungry Jack's of a young girl. And I remember thinking, how awful, how close to home, that poor young girl, obviously oblivious at that point that
never
had anything to do with us. We'd never had anything to do with the police ever.
Yeah.
Courtney had never had anything to do with the police. She didn't even have never had a parking fine. She drove. It was just so left field. It was so, not us.
The thought wouldn't have even crossed your mind.
It didn't. It absolutely didn't.
To do with Courtney's death.
Her brother, Chris, was out that day, and at that particular time I wasn't driving because I'd had retinal surgery. So he would drop me at work in that morning, and was coming to get me in the afternoon. My concern on hearing it was that he didn't go that way, which was past our house, to come and pick me up from work because there'd be traffic. It had nothing to do with realising that it was my child.
It was. I heard it all day on the news, talkback radio, Ray Hadley, they're talking about it, and that no information, no disclosure, no information was sort of given out to the public. So
you're listening to all this play out.
And I'm thinking the same thing. I thought, Chris has got to go that way. So I'm ringing Chris, and Mum's ringing Chris, and Chris isn't answering the phone because he's driving. Yeah. And then he pulled over and he rang me and he said, "What's going on?" He said, "I've got Mum ringing me. I've got you ringing me. What's going on?" And I said, "Look, there's been an incident. They've absolutely blocked out the intersection. You're going to have to go right around just to go and pick up Mum."
Okay.
And that's how.
And we were all still oblivious at that point, that it was, that our lives had changed forever in the worst possible way.
So when did you find out?
Well, after afternoon tea, I went back to work and thinking, it was on my mind, thinking that's so close to home, this poor young family, whatever.
And just to if people, sorry,
You're
just
right.
So people are aware, it was the 27th of February the 10th of February 2015
That's
at
correct.
West Hoxton.
That's correct. Yep. Corner of Cow Pasture Road and Hoxton Park Road.
And Hungry Jack's. That's
people. And when I talk about this case, if they don't know Courtney's name, they know the incident.
They do.
It was a young girl.
Yep, shot at Hungry Jack's.
Carrying a knife that was shot by police
That's
on
right.
the grass verge.
Absolutely, yes.
It was like half an hour before lunchtime, before peak time for Hungry Jack's.
And for those people that don't know the area, it's a very busy intersection.
Very.
It's a cross section of cars and traffic lights.
Yep.
It was very public.
Yep.
Very public, which in some ways this is going to sound strange, but we're grateful if it had to happen and it was public, because we were blessed in some ways to have the footage. Now that might sound awful, but for us that gave us peace of mind further down the track when we went to inquest, that we weren't going to be steamrolled.
Yeah.
Or Courtney's case wasn't going to be steamrolled.
And we will talk about that, because that was one of your big concerns, and you would raise those concerns in very strong terms to me when we had a conversation. But sorry, I interrupted you when you found out. So tell us about that. You're at school.
I was at school.
Heard it announced in the
in the staff
media.
room and the media and that sort of thing, and then went back to class, went to work, and then it was about 2:45. So nearly, I finished at 3. So it was nearly finishing time, and over the loudspeaker at the school, asking for Mrs. Topic and the principal at the time, please come to the office urgently. And I immediately wasn't thinking that, but immediately knew something was wrong. I hadn't quite put the two together at that point, but I thought, my first thoughts were, Chris has had an accident on his way to come get us, is what I thought. And then we walk into the school office, and there's all these detectives there. Didn't know them from a bar of soap. And then they told me that my daughter was dead. She'd been shot dead by police down at Hungry Jack's. And I remember saying to them, no, the media said that the girl was 16. My daughter's 22. You've made a mistake. Obviously, they hadn't made a mistake. And I was then taken into my principal's office with detectives. They got ambulance, and within probably about 15, 20 minutes, Chris had turned up, and I could see him outside my principal's office in his car. And one of the detectives said, I'll go out and tell him. I said, no, you won't. I said, I'm telling him. And my assistant principal came out with me, and he got out of his car, and I told him that his little sister was dead. And he screamed and collapsed, and then we both got up and went back into my principal's office, and we were in there that was around 3-ish, till nearly 6:30 that night, in terms of statements and all the legalities that need to be sorted out. And at that point...
And you being conscious of getting the family together.
Well, my first thoughts were into mother mode. How do the rest of the family, what do I do? How do I deal with this? And my youngest son at the time was at the high school next door, and it was a Tuesday. He was at sport, so he was obviously not on site at school. So that was in my mind. I didn't know if Ron knew at that stage. That was on my mind. I didn't know whether my third child, he was up the mountains with his partner, and he was on red P plates at the time. I didn't want him finding out, because he, being a young person at the time, he was on Facebook and all the rest of it. I didn't want him finding out in that manner. So with those detectives, then it became my first mission to try and get hold of his partner who he was with. We didn't know his phone number because they'd only just started going out. And he got hold of his partner's number, and they got him to go to Penrith Police Station. And they were wonderful there, I must say. Given the circumstances, they treated him with the utmost respect. And I said to them, I don't want him driving. He's on red P plates. He's just found out his sister's gone. Yeah. And they were wonderful, and they drove him and his partner and his car back to school where I was. So they were wonderful. At that point in the afternoon, the school next door had found out, obviously, the high school, and then the exec had gone and got our youngest son, Brody, and brought him across, and he was brought into the principal's office, and I said to him too, your big sister's dead. All surreal, still very surreal. Still, It's like I'm there now. It's part of who I am now. I wish it wasn't, but I can remember all of it yeah, very, very, very deeply.
Did you have questions in your mind about what had happened? Because you wouldn't have had a lot of answers there and trying to comprehend.
I was still in the mother mode, actually, just trying to make sure my boys were okay.
Yep.
And the detectives had said that they've spoken with Ron at work and he was on his way with detectives. So I knew he was, I wouldn't say okay, but I knew he was coming to where I was. And then we'd all be together as a family without Courtney. And in some ways, I tried to be stoic, I suppose. I tried to just keep it all together, do what needed to be done, and we'll deal with this later, thinking we can deal with this later, but it's not something you can deal with later. At that stage, I was thinking about my parents. They were elderly and they watch all the newses. And so the detectives organised for detectives to go to their place and tell them, so they were aware. So there was a lot of this was all going on my mind. Who can I help? Who can I protect? Who can I?
You went in the mother mode.
Yeah, and I remember even one of the detectives saying they had to go to our house that evening to do like a run through a video, all this sort of stuff for evidence and so forth. We never went back to our house that day. And I remember the first thing I said to them, oh my gosh, did I clean the house this morning? Did I, is the kitchen clean?
Stupid little things
that have no consequence, but my mind was just in routine. And routine gave me the moments there that I could still cope at that point in time.
Yeah.
It was just mother mode at that particular time. It wasn't real. It was words. It meant nothing. It was just somebody was just playing a cruel joke.
Sunk in. What about you, Ron? How did you find out?
I was my company I was working for is based at Wetherill Park. I was on site repairing forklifts at Villawood. I finished there at 3:30 and then I go home from there, and I had the office ring me at 3:00 and they said to me, Ron, you need to come back to work urgently. Your tablet that you're using for work is corrupt and it's corrupting the whole system, so we need you back here urgently.
Right.
And I said, listen, I've got 30 minutes till I finish. Let me finish up here and then I'll come back. And they said, no, we need you to leave it and come now. And I sort of didn't. I thought it was a bit strange, but okay, not a problem. So I headed back to Wetherill Park, and I parked the van in the car park, and I got out of the van with my tablet, and I walked into the office with my tablet, and they said, upstairs in the boardroom. And I went upstairs in the boardroom, still carrying my tablet in hand, and I walked in the boardroom, and there was 4 suits sitting there, and then they introduced themselves as Cabramatta detectives. Yeah.
And how did they break that?
Look, we can't fault Cabramatta detectives. Yep. They were beautiful, wonderful, caring, empathising people. And they turned around and they said, Ron, have you heard that a girl's been shot dead at Hoxton Park this afternoon or today? And said, yeah, I've been listening to it all day on Talkback. And they said, unfortunately, we're here to tell you that it was your daughter, Courtney. Yeah.
I'm lost for words, guys, because I just can't imagine how you process that. And Leesa, you sort of articulated it. And Ron, you're in this. That's just been dropped on you. There must be 1,000 things going through your mind.
She never went anywhere on her own.
Ever.
If anything, she went to work 2 blocks away from home, and she came home from work, and if she went somewhere in the car, it was grocery shopping with you on a Sunday.
Yeah.
That you used to do as a ritual.
Every Sunday, her and I'd go and get the groceries and drive, and
So she'd get her car out and she'd actually drive her car and
again, because I wasn't driving at the time, so.
And then have lunch together and come home. So, and she always, if she didn't want to come to family things or whatever, Leesa would insist that she should, and then she wouldn't hesitate and she'd come. So she was never ever alone for any great length of time. And to be told that it's your daughter in the middle of nowhere, for no reason whatsoever, it just didn't make sense. There was just this disconnect. It was a total disconnect.
It didn't fit with who Courtney was, who we are. None of it made sense. And still struggled to make sense of it.
To be shot and killed by police, it's not that you I think any parent, you've always steel yourself for there's been an accident.
Absolutely,
that. But for
I've got relatives like grandparents and uncles and that fought for this country at war.
Yeah.
First World War, Vietnam War, relatives that have put their lives up for this country and have died by bullet in another country at war. How is it that my little girl died by the side of the road where she was bothering nobody, not with anybody, no one was around her, within 41 seconds, and she had a bullet through her heart? Who made them judge, jury and executioner?
Yeah.
That's I can't get my head around it that, we've got medals at home from family members that died at war, and my daughter died the same death. It's horrific and it's senseless.
Hard to comprehend.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about Courtney. I want people to understand Courtney because I got in my role as a senior investigator for the critical incident. Part of it was finding out who Courtney was, and she was a beautiful, beautiful young girl, and I'd describe her as very sweet. Just sweet-natured, and that's why it seems so, at odds with coming to such a violent, confrontational death.
Absolutely.
Tell us about Courtney.
Courtney was our second of 4 beautiful children. We were blessed. We had a beautiful family. We still have a beautiful family. It's just Courtney's with us, but not how we want her to be. And she, full-term, normal pregnancy, normal baby, all the rest of it. Went through preschool, playgroup, all the routine things that, we did as a family. She did gymnastics, she did dancing, she did swimming, she did little athletics, anything that was going, we got the kids involved in because it was important. And then she started school. She went to the school that I was working at when she died. She went right through there into the high school that her brother was at the day she died. So we've got a strong sense of community. Courtney did too. She belonged to our family, but she belonged to our extended family. She belonged to her friends. She belonged to her colleagues, Woolworths. The day she passed away, the day of her funeral, they had to close Woolworths because everyone wanted to go to her funeral. And that wasn't something just they did because of the sake of it. Courtney was such a gentle, beautiful person. She was quiet. She was shy. She didn't like being part of the crowd. She was a little bit different and quirky, and that's what we loved about Courtney. That's what we still love about Courtney. She would do anything for anybody. If anyone asked, she'd help out. As even a mother, please hang the washing out 3 pegs, don't forget, Like she was an integral part of our family, still is. We just don't get to hug and hold her anymore. Normal schooling. She was diagnosed with ADHD when she was in year 2. We went through the trial of medications, Ritalin, dexamphetamine, so forth, under the guidance of her paediatrician. It didn't work particularly well, and there were a lot of side effects. So we made the decision to stop that and just go with psychologists, and that's sort of behavioural therapies and so on. We did tutoring, we did all that. But Courtney was the child that came into class and she'd say, "Mum, I don't know. The teacher said good morning, the teacher said goodbye." I don't know what she said in the middle because she'd just go in and she'd zone out, no trouble, never a detention, never in trouble for anything. A rule follower, very much a rule follower, as a lot of people that have ASD or autism spectrum disorders. She followed the rules. She did not ever sort of vary that line. The rules are there for a reason, and you follow the rules, and that's what makes it. She'd never done anything wrong. She'd never hurt anybody. She was great with a brother. She was great at home. We were a normal family. Obviously, there were arguments here and there and all whatever. But at the end of the day, we were family.
That certainly came across when myself and the team were putting together a brief of evidence, and it was clear how much love was in the family and what a tight family unit you were. And I think the coroner made the comments in her findings about the love and the safe family environment that Courtney was brought up in. So
absolutely, when in the initial stages when we were starting to learn about coronial inquests and brief of evidence and all these things we'd never heard of before, we were told initially that Michael Barnes would have been the commissioner, but he'd just
the coroner.
The coroner. But he'd recently been involved with the Lint Cafe, and he was taking some time. And we thought, oh, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Again, we didn't know. But then it was Deputy State Coroner Liz Ryan, and she look. I mean, I didn't know her from a bar of soap again too. But the first day of the coronial inquest, she turned up. And unbeknownst to media and everything, but that inquest started on site at Hungry Jack's that day. Yeah. We knew a few people that needed to know knew, and she was there. And from the get-go, that made me feel like she cared.
It was real.
It was real. Yeah.
It was no longer a procedure.
Yeah,
it was real.
It's and kudos to the deputy state coroner. I met her out at the scene and walked her through the scene, and I think the fact that she took that time and it was genuine, and I know everything about it's confronting to you. The whole process. It's a process that you don't understand because you haven't been involved in it before, but that gave me confidence that she was genuine.
And us too. We turned up there and, we had to not confront, but see the officers that had taken Courtney's life, dressed in their uniforms just like they were that day. I couldn't. That's beyond confronting. It was surreal. It was scary. And when we turned up, one of them was sort of joking and laughing, and I remember thinking, my daughter's dead. Do you not realise? Look, it might have been bravado or whatever, that's fine. But I remember that struck me as disrespectful. Yep. And Liz Ryan came across as the utmost respectful. Like I said, we didn't know her and was, but she seemed to care, and care that the right outcome would come and the right answers would come from this investigation.
Yeah.
And that we were grateful for that. We'd asked for transparency and, honesty and decency from the get-go.
Well, you guys, and I alluded to it or spoke of it at the start, you taught me a lot, and it was a good slap in the face for me that, and I'll relay that from my side and you explain it.
Not literally.
I think you would have if you could have. It would have been more than a slap. I think Ron had the baseball bat ready to hit me over the head. My role as a senior critical incident investigator is to oversee the investigation, and it's part of your role as a homicide inspector. So this happened, a police shooting, so a homicide inspector has to oversee it, like the Link Cafe where an inspector will oversee the investigation. We have homicides running. We have, I think I had 2 or 3 critical incidents running at that particular point in time. We get your matter, and I go out to the scene, I get briefed on it, and I coordinate it and put it together an investigative team. And I left you my contact numbers, a contact number if there's anything you want. As a genuine contact me if you want. And I think it was about 2 or 3 months after, and I got a phone call on a Sunday, I think it was, at home, and it was from a local police station. And Courtney's grandfather had come into the police station and said, what's going on with Courtney's investigation? We haven't heard anything from police, blah, 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 and unleashed. And on the back of that, the police station phoned me, and I spoke to Courtney's grandfather, and he very articulately put across that I'm a dickhead and he doesn't trust me. And there are a few other, but done in a very, I must admit, very smooth way. Basically, the complaint was, we haven't heard from you. We don't know what's going on with the investigation, etc. I was absolutely mortified that what you guys had been through, I had caused you more pain by not keeping you updated on it. I naively thought the contact number, if there's any questions, you can phone me. As people know, you can phone me 24 hours a day and I'll take the call. When it was explained to me how you felt, I came around, I think it was either that day or the next day, I came around.
It was that day.
It was that day, right. So it was on the Sunday. I jumped in the car and said, I got to go over and see you guys. Tell you what, walking into that house, I knew I wasn't popular. You were all sitting around the kitchen table and you vented. And it really, you got it across to me so well in that and one point that really stuck with me. You said, we've never dealt with police before. We've gone through our whole lives. We might get a parking ticket or whatever. That would be the extent of our dealings with police. We're just average people. We didn't think we had the right to contact you, an inspector, directly, blah, blah, blah. And that mortified me then, that I'd been in homicide that long. I'm looking at victims' families of homicide. I'm in contact with them. And then you guys have just been dragged into this world that I'm very familiar with, but it was a world completely foreign to you guys. And I naively thought, you just pick the phone up and ring me if you've got questions, and I'll explain what's going on. And I realised how much I'd let you down. And it sort of, from that, it not only changed me, but I've also, if I'm speaking to other people, speaking to police when I was still in the police, training days and that, making that point that don't assume that families will reach out to you, because sometimes it's too confronting. You think old school values, you don't ever question the police, what the police are doing. I think that came across. And then the venom that you guys had in the conversation around your kitchen table. How do we know we can trust you? You're just going to cover this up. You're going to cover this up for police, and all the things. Quite rightly, I understand why. Here's police investigating a police shooting. There's no sort of perceived independence. So I fully understood where you're coming from, and I think it seemed like hours that we spent there. I think it was hours that I spent speaking to you guys, and from that moment we sort of got a good relationship where I kept you up to date on things, and you'd phone me if you had any concerns. That's my perspective on it. Do you want to explain, don't pull any punches, how pissed off you were with me?
Look, pissed off is an understatement.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, you could rate it in a little bit.
Sorry.
Look, like Leesa said, that the term clean skins.
When you guys were referred to.
That's it.
Clean skins.
From Cabramatta detectives, they turned around and they said, sorry it took so long to rally you guys up. You guys are clean skins.
Yeah.
We couldn't get a trace on you. We sort of went to a lot of trouble to track down your family home, and then we jumped the back fence and looked through the back window when we seen a school information leaflet on the kitchen table, and then we went from there. So the clean skin thing, we don't know anything that the police do.
And that's terminology if people don't understand clean skin. If we're talking about people like Ron and Leesa and their family, they're clean skins. We've got no record of them. They haven't been in trouble for anything, that type of thing. So
that's it.
That normally, if people are caught up in situations like this, we'll have some information because we've probably dealt with them in the past. But you guys were clean skins.
And yet our daughter was shot dead in 41 seconds.
Yeah.
And also the fact that you turn around and said that you can't accept or be comfortable with police investigating police.
Yeah.
Had a real problem with that. Still have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I have.
And
no other organisation has that set up, and I think it needs to be dealt with.
And don't ever forget when you got up to leave the kitchen table that day and you turned around and said to us that you will honestly do a transparent and truthful investigation, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you'll do for us. That's all we had to hold on to.
Yeah.
When you walked away, we grabbed onto that and we held on to that.
Yeah.
Right. And although painstakingly we had to wait 2 years, right, for 6 volumes of investigation, we were hanging on to the fact that you looked us in the eye and said it'd be transparent, honest, truthful investigation.
And we appreciated that more than you'll ever know.
Yeah.
Because up until that point, from February when Courtney died, it was about 4 or 5 months later, till that day when you came into our home, we had people, and it was in the media as well, obviously, because it was a well-publicised public event, for want of a better way of putting it, that people asking us, well, did Courtney do this? And Courtney, we didn't know if we were criminals ourselves.
Yeah.
We didn't know. We know our daughter. We knew her. We know her, and we knew she wouldn't have. We knew there was nothing that she would have done wrong. Obviously, we were going to wait and see till the inquest and everything comes through, and it was proven. We know that, but at that time, people were asking us, well, you know, you must have done something, and what if they're not talking to you? There was a lot of talk, and in the media, and about, well, if they're not approaching you, they must be suspicious of you, and then they think you've done something right. And we had no idea what to think. We were terrified. We were mourning the loss of our daughter. We still hadn't come to terms with any of it. We just buried her, and it was a nightmare that we wanted to wake up from, but it just wasn't. We weren't waking up from it.
And I apologise to you guys because I just made the assumption you'd understand the process and all that, and that's why it really hit me hard when you explained that day on the Sunday when I came round to see you. Those assumptions were wrong. You had no idea what was going on, and you just thought silence is what are we up to?
Yeah.
And I do remember what I said to you, and the only thing I could say is that if police deserve to be criticised, they'll be criticised. That was I guaranteed that, and I meant it. I wasn't going to pull any punches. And I hope that did give you some sort of.
See, we were left in the dark not only on the investigation side of things, but on the media side of things too.
Yeah,
you know, the media turned around. We got people, family, friends, associates, all reading the media.
Yeah,
we're looking at the media. From after it happened or whatever, I went online about a week later to sort of see information I could see, and I seen my daughter bleed out on the grass.
Yeah.
Right. Because of a guy driving past, filming it. Right. So, and then there was 1,000 pictures. There was 1,000 people's point of view. There was 1,000 of everything, you know, and the media was picking pieces, you know, she was knife wielding. She was lunging at police with a knife. She was zombie-like, you know, and then some genius turned around and came up with the idea, she was a knife wielding zombie.
Yeah.
And then that stuck. And then that resonated, you know, and then we were in the dark about that as well. So we had to give due course to an investigation to try and bring out the transparency and some truth, right? And we had the media sort of that we had no idea on why they were sort of.
Well, you've thrust really into two worlds that you don't understand, aren't you?
Absolutely.
You're thrust into an investigation, then you're thrust into the world of the media.
And everyone buys a paper every single day.
And everyone has an opinion, you know, and they're not shy in telling you their opinion, whether they know the facts or not. Which, you know, that's society we live in. And that's why we were fairly quiet in the lead up to let it play out truthfully and transparency, and we'd put our trust in you.
Yeah.
And you delivered. You delivered more than what we could have asked for.
We kept our opinions to ourselves for 2 years until we got that investigation.
I thought you were so reasonable in so many different ways on the things as the information was coming in, and it was always balanced. You weren't just driven by emotion and going off for the sake of going off.
We knew our girl. We knew our daughter.
Yeah, you were. I've got to say, you're consistent with that. And
she deserved her parents, her family, her brothers to present how she would have presented. That's how we present as a family. That's who we are. It's not an act. We're just genuine, average Western Suburbs people.
I got that sense round at your place and sitting around the table, the whole family was there.
I got to give credit to my wife, right? Dinner time was always dinner time. Yep. There was always a family of 6 around the dinner table, right? And there was no holds bar.
Yep.
Whatever you wanted to bring to the table, you brought to the table, right? Leesa and I grew up with each other. We're very comfortable with each other. We've known each other all our lives, right? So that's what we did with our children, right? Everyone needed to be comfortable with each other. Everyone needed to be a family.
Sometimes your hair would stand on end. Not yours, sorry. But
you had to take a dig,
I did, sorry.
You said you'd forgiven me.
Sorry.
But that family of 6, that nucleus around the kitchen table, that Leesa, right, seen happened every single dinner time, right, was the same.
Yeah.
There was one empty chair.
Yeah.
But the family was the same. So collectively, we knew there was a big, big problem there. There was a big issue. There was something that we don't know about, something we weren't told about, something that we haven't been privy to yet.
Yeah, it must be hard. We've talked about the impact on you guys. What about her brothers?
All of them, including us, my parents, we've all been impacted. but we're all impacted in different ways at different times, and it varies. Different things trigger us. But 8 years on, we're still struggling. I've got post-traumatic stress disorder. I work 5 days a week. I go out on the weekends and, do normal things. And, and you're undoubtedly going to come across police.
What?
And that stresses me out.
Is it all right to talk about that time that I was called when you stopped by police?
Yes. Police, yes. It's still a problem now. I still have to get my licence checked every 6 months or 12 months.
Okay. I got a call. I forget what day it was, but just a call. I think it was in the afternoon.
It was a school holidays, I think, because I think I was going to have coffee with somebody.
Okay, and it was a highway patrol officer that just phoned me directly and said that I've got a lady here that asked me to, I forget how he described you, but you're obviously extremely distressed.
Absolutely, I was.
The only thing she said, can you phone this person? Can you phone this? And was my number. And he phoned and said, I've said, who is it? And he explained, and I explained the situation. And just say, look, let's allow some a space here, what she's been through with her daughter being killed by police, and it's a triggering thing seeing police officers. Tell us about that from your experience. So the police have pulled you over for, I'm not sure whether it was random.
No, it wasn't. It was school holidays. I was going to meet with a girlfriend for coffee at Wetherill Park, and which is, that's what I do during school holidays because I work in a school, catch up with friends. And I was heading to Wetherill Park, and in front of me there was a police officer in a highway patrol. I didn't know if it was male, female or whatever. Yep. And I could just, as I'm behind them, I'm just feeling my skin bristle and everything. So I thought, all right, just go around them. I went around at the speed limit in saying that. I didn't fly, there was nothing, but I thought I need to, get around and go around the roundabout and then just get on with my day rather than sit there be triggered further. That's what I did. And then when I went around the roundabout, virtually just through the roundabout, next minute the lights, the sirens, exactly what Courtney saw that day. And they're behind me, and I freaked. Okay. I absolutely freaked. I thought, they're going to shoot me. They're going to kill me. Why didn't they just kill me and not my daughter? And anyway, your head gets away from you pretty quickly.
I remember that's what you were saying to me over the phone.
I was saying some very not nice things to them, and you murdered my daughter. And they said, get out the car. I got out the car, and I said, come on, just shoot me now. I remember saying that to them. And by this stage, obviously, they've thought I'm a problem, and they've called him back up. Then all more police cars came with sirens on, and that freaked me out even further. Yeah. And I tried to tell them, but they were in police mode, I guess. And then in the meantime, I'd rung my friend who I was meeting for coffee, and she came. And tried to calm me down, and they rang Ron, and he came from work, and they didn't want me to leave. They wanted me to go for a mental health check at the local hospital, and I wasn't going with police or anything anywhere. Yeah. And Ron said, no, I'll take her home, and my girlfriend Kathy too, and we went home. We didn't go home. We went to Glory Jean's and had coffee and cake because when I'm stressed, I eat cake. But cool. We went there and I calmed down. And once the perceived threat in my head, who was there for my daughter and they killed her, had gone, there was no issue. It was a chronic post-traumatic stress disorder reaction, but I couldn't make them understand that, and they wanted to have me put away. Yeah. And they spoke to you, and then we were told that, oh, look, don't worry about it. It's, there's no charges, no anything. I thought that was the end of it. Just thought, dear me.
That's right. I forgot. Yeah. Okay. Explain that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, I don't know, probably if it's 6 or 8 weeks later, I'm not sure, I came home from work and got the mail and that my license has been suspended. And I've like, what the, it wasn't quite it was a bit more than that. But, and I've sort of got off my nut and tried to make sense of it. And anyway, so I rang you. I remember ringing you and saying, well, you said this was fine. And I sort of probably went off at you again. Sorry, Gary, I love you.
That's all right. That's what I'm there for.
And, well, the long story short is that I had to go to court.
Yeah.
In the midst of waiting for an inquest into my daughter's murder, I had to go to court to fight this, and I was cleared. There was nothing to answer to. It was just bullshit. Not
that I have a big influence in the police force, as everyone can see now, but you know how you berated me at your place. I berated the police about that. I just couldn't believe in what had gone down and the processes. Nothing was going to be done, and the processes just and I was just trying to logically explain the situation.
So that's about 6 years ago, and I still every year now get the form that's for my license to say mental health issues, which is not untrue, can I tell you? But I need to go and get it filled out by the doctor and go through that for my license. I've got a gold license. I've never lost my license. I've never had lost points like in years and years and years. I had no dramas, and yet still every year I have to do that because of that incident in the midst of waiting to go to inquest. I remember there was a female officer there, and I remember saying to her, probably screaming to her or at her, that do you not understand? My child's dead. Have you ever had your child? And she said, actually, I do. Now, I don't know that officer from a borough soap, but I've never heard from her since. I don't know her circumstances. But little things like that just add to a really shitty situation.
Gary, I don't know nothing about policing. Absolutely nothing. Right. But when I was called up to come and rescue Leesa, right, from she was on the side of the road and everything like that. When she was on Cowpasture Road, she turned onto Horsley Drive and drove up Horsley Drive. When I drove up, I could see 4 police cars, 2 highway patrol and 2 general duties there with lights on, right? And I'm looking and I'm going, this can't be it.
Yeah.
And then as I sort of come past the car slowly, she was sitting in the bus stop, right, in a bus shelter, right, with her girlfriend, and she was absolutely distraught, absolutely distraught. And I parked my van there. Actually, I parked my van in a factory driveway, so I wouldn't be parked illegally in a no stopping on the Horsley Drive or whatever.
There you go again, you clean skin.
Right. And then I walked down.
Last thing we needed was another ticket. God.
I walked down and I said, what's going on? And one of the officers turned around and said, we've stopped your wife for erratical driving or whatever and that, and now she doesn't want to answer questions or anything like that. And I go, she doesn't want to answer questions because yous are all here. And he looked at me and I said, what's going on? I said, there's 4 cars and there's 8 officers. What's going on? You know, and the guy didn't know what to say. And I turned around and said, listen, what I'm doing is I'm taking my wife and I'm taking her home, okay? That's what I'm doing. The issue with my wife is yous guys, right? All yous guys here in uniforms with, lights and sirens and everything. That's the issue here. I'm taking her and I'm taking her home. And then I looked and there was one female officer there, right? And she looked at me and she said, sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right? And I didn't know what that was all about. And I took Leesa and I took her away. Right? Now, I don't understand how one female driver driving erratically in a car on her own without any, if they'd done a scan on the number plate or whatever, it wouldn't have come up, with any whatever and that. How the hell does that generate 4 cars and 8 officers?
And I think the fact that I explained the situation would give some understanding or credit to what
you would have hoped so, but evidently not.
Yeah.
I mean, 4 cars, 8 officers.
Yeah. But I'm trying to take one good from that. If that female officer that said, I'm sorry, how that de-escalates the situation.
Yes,
absolutely.
So quickly.
Yeah.
That's right.
Rather than escalating, de-escalating.
That's the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah.
If they had de-escalated that day, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation.
Yeah.
And same with me on that day. If they only realised, and I tried to make them realise and whatever, but if they didn't call all the extra cars and just said, all right, sit, we'll wait for a while. When your husband gets here, then you can go. There's no issue. And sadly, it seems to be something of the time. I hear it slowly changing, but obviously I don't have anything to do with the police force from inside. But we have heard of friends and family that have had relatives involved with the police from a mental health perspective, and things are changing. That we are grateful for. But again, like any organisation, funding, and, like elections, change of personnel, all that changes things. So
change is difficult. When we talk about the shooting of Courtney. I think I'm just going to fast forward here and give a couple of comments from the coronial inquest, but then we're going to actually talk about the incident. But I want people to understand this is what the coroner said after hearing all the evidence that was gathered and presented to the coroner. So just bear with me for a sec. And this was in the coroner's findings. Although her death should not have happened, it would be wrong to understate the seriousness of the situation. Although we do not know for certainty what Courtney was intending to do, she was moving in the direction of the police officer who shot her, and she was in 2 metres of him when he fired his pistol. He had reason to believe his life was in danger. But that cannot be all. Courtney's death is emphatically not one where it can be said this couldn't have been prevented. Her death raises broad issues about how police officers are trained to deal with people suffering a mental health crisis. So that line is particularly important, but that cannot be all. Courtney's death is emphatically not one where it can be said this couldn't have been prevented. Now, I suppose a comment from the coroner like that's a double-edged sword for you in that,
we're grateful that it's been recognised publicly.
But
it's our child that's no longer here.
It could have been prevented. So let's talk about the incident that led to Courtney's death. She was at home that morning.
She was. Yep.
She had hung the washing out.
She had
with the 3 pegs on the big items. Done what Mum had said, and then she's walked up to the shopping centre. And she's taken a kitchen knife with her. There were, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going from the memories of it, but there was witnesses that said that they saw Courtney walking along in what appeared to be a distressed state.
Yeah.
Yes.
She had a knife in her hand and she was hitting her head.
Yes.
There was one witness.
Concerns for welfare were the police, the calls to police were for concerns for welfare.
So that's initiated the police hearing something's going on.
That was a terminology the radio officer used when reporting that incident to his fellow officers.
The concerns for welfare. Yeah, and that would be, from a policing point of view, that's the type of call. She's gone into the Hungry Jack's store and she's bought a
frozen Coke, a slushie.
Slushie. Yeah. And no issue in there.
Paid for it. Changes. We've since been given a change.
Waited for it
in line
to be poured and served to her. Yep.
Someone more calls about the police because she's carrying a knife, and it was a kitchen knife from your kitchen.
Yep.
Then she's walked, and I described this area as a grass verge. There's a car park that she walked through a car park, and then onto this grass verge near the intersection where all the roads are converging. Police have arrived on the back of those calls, and I'll just describe it briefly in just brief details. Police have arrived, a male and a female officer. The female officer has, and this is all in the space of 41 seconds, so from the time the police get out of their car to the end where Courtney's been shot and killed, tried to taser Courtney and called for her drop the knife.
Taser didn't work.
Didn't work. And then a highway patrol officer has turned up, come from another direction and used OC spray. That's a capsicum spray that is meant to debilitate people if you get it sprayed in your face and that. Sprayed Courtney, and the pathology reports show that the spray actually hit Courtney. From that, she appeared to be, let's say, disorientated, agitated. I'm not sure what word.
All of the above.
All
of the above. Yeah.
Freaked out.
Yeah.
Then has stumbled a bit, headed in a direction, and then she was shot from less than 2 metres away by another one of the first officers that got there, and hit in the chest, and efforts to revive her failed at the scene.
And she fell down and bled out on the ground on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the situation that we describe it, and I hate putting you guys through this again because
it's our life.
It is your life, but a couple of things of concern there, how quickly it escalated. that was there other ways? What threat was Courtney to anyone in particular? I know from a policing point of view that the police would say she's got a knife, she's not complying to directions, we've got to remove the weapon. The weapon is a risk. She might be at risk to herself, but she might run off and harm another person. So that's a primary focus of the police. The counter-argument could be, was she in immediate risk? There's a number of police cars that arrived shortly after, within a matter of seconds after
the bullet entered the heart.
After the bullet. So there was plenty of police on the way. So you've got a 22-year-old girl. I wouldn't say very physically capable. Would that be like? It's not.
She's average.
It's not a 6-foot man with a knife.
No.
And the way she was walking, and I think you used the word at one stage, a zombie-like state, or that was
according to the media,
because it was walking slow. She was walking slowly with the knife.
She was there, but she wasn't there in terms of her mind, apparently.
Yeah. And then she's ended up deceased.
Yeah.
Knowing those circumstances, what's your thoughts? So let's forget what the coroner's saying. That's a brief description of what happened at the incident.
Let me tell you what I had. I had all this footage, right? All this footage that the media have put out there, right? There was pages of it, all these still shots, but they're all after the shot, after the shot, after the shot, after the shot.
Yeah.
Right? The only thing we had was one footage where you could hear the shot go off, right? But that was a person in the intersection, and then it was after the shot. After your investigation, and we got the 6 volumes of brief, and we started going through it, it was all before the shot, before the shot, before the shot, right? And we're learning things that, Courtney's on a grass verge, Courtney's by herself, Courtney's taken herself away from the general public at the store or the car park or anything like that. Police turn up. Senior officer says to probationary constable, there she is. She's got the knife. Get your taser out. So she steps out with the taser. He steps out with his gun drawn and then walks onto the grass verge. They engage with her. Right, and then a highway patrolman who comes off the M7, who listens to this on the radio, turns around and stops short, right, and comes up behind Courtney, right? So when you've got a probationary constable engaging with Courtney saying, drop the knife, drop the knife, drop the knife, and you got senior constable with gun drawn already, right, the highway patrol has considered that this is a escalated situation because the taser and the gun's already drawn.
Yeah.
So he turns around and sneaks up behind Courtney with his capsicum spray to de-escalate the situation, right? When he hits her with the capsicum spray, it turns a normal situation that hasn't gone escalated or de-escalated, right, into an uncontrolled situation where Courtney just goes absolutely schizo and uncontrolled and still has the knife in her hand, hasn't dropped the knife, right? When she's being told to drop the knife by the probationary constable, she drops a slushy.
Yep.
Bad move. She should have dropped the knife. She dropped the slushy, right? And then she gets blindsided by the capsicum spray. It all turns to shit, right? And then she becomes uncontrollable. Right, they try to maintain their ring of safety or their triangle of safety.
Yep.
Right, and then her flight changes to fight because she's fighting with the effects of the capsicum spray, and she turns towards the senior constable with his gun already drawn, and she's still got the knife.
Yeah.
Now that happened in 41 seconds. 41 seconds from when he instructed his probationary constable to draw her taser, and he gets out of the car with his gun drawn, right? 41 seconds from that moment. 17 seconds from when the highway patrolman stops short of the situation and comes up behind Courtney to blindside her. 7 seconds after he sprays a capsicum spray, right? Then that shot is fired.
Courtney's dead.
Right? And when the senior constable with the firearm drawn sees the highway patrol coming up behind her. He says to his probationary constable, taser, 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 taser. She presses the trigger on the taser. The battery's not sufficient enough, and the taser fails in her hand, right, at the most crucial time. Right, we've got footage from the taser up until that point where she pulls the trigger, and then the battery fails, the footage ceases, and the barbs don't deploy.
Yeah.
So then he's left already holding his gun, Courtney in an uncontrolled situation, still with knife in hand, 2 metres away.
I've got, and I'm just holding back here a little bit because I don't know if I want to put you guys through it, but I've got the actual video of what happened. As you've just described it, what actually happened. You right to listen, listen to that?
Replays over in our head time after time.
Let me tell you, the first time I seen that, after your investigation, and we were privy to that footage, I looked at it and I said to the people in the room, I can't even remember, but there was a big audience there to see that footage for a first time.
Including counsellors and everybody.
To be entered into evidence. Yeah. Right? And I looked at it and I said, that's Keystone Cops.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not watching a reality here. I said, that is Keystone Cops. So that was what my first opinion was on the footage that we're about to see.
Put the mask down, Timmy. Put the mask on the ground. Put the mask on the ground, Timmy. Put it on the ground. Mask on the ground. The mask on the ground. Put the mask on the ground. Put the mask.
Oh, God. They killed her. Look, they shot her. He shot her.
That's it. Yep.
She's dead.
All over.
She was not a criminal. She was never a criminal. She was an upstanding citizen, a good human being, a loved daughter, sister.
She didn't even understand what was going on.
She wasn't even there, and that came out throughout the inquest from the forensic psychiatrist. Although she was there physically, mentally she wasn't there. She had no concept of what was required of her. Yeah. And they acted as though she did, and she didn't. And that's where it fell down.
If I'm going to point a gun or a taser at you now, how are you going to react?
Yeah.
You know? She didn't even react that way.
She didn't react to the sirens, to the instructions. It's like she was oblivious to what was going on.
You know.
And anyone else, if you were in your right mind, you know, police are there waving a gun in your face, you're going to freak in terms of, oh, my God, what have I got to do? And there was nothing. She was not aware of what the situation was.
Yeah.
You also made the point that she'd taken herself away from people.
Yeah.
Like, and that area is away. It's out of the car park.
There was no, in my opinion, in our opinion, there was no incident until the police arrived that day. If they had have got there and de-escalated, if they had have got there with a mental health trained a person, we wouldn't be sitting here again today.
There was 2 mental health trained officers from 2 different cars, partnered up with 2 other officers, so 4 other officers running across the road when the shot was discharged. Right. One of them was a 50-year-old, the other one was a 40-year-old. They both had credited mental health training. Right, and those officers were running across the road when the shot was discharged. Yeah, that's how.
He wasn't given a chance.
That's how close backup was. That's how close those 3 involved officers, would have changed to 7 involved officers.
7 involved officers with a young girl and 1 knife.
That's right.
Yeah. That was, for 90% of it, was pointing down beside her. It wasn't used in any way, shape, or form. It was lifted up at the end when she was in the fight or flight mode, and there was no incident. If they treated her like a human being instead of a criminal, there was no criminal background. All the calls that day were for concern for welfare. If they had put welfare first and foremost in their thoughts, she would probably still be here.
When the involved officers were asked in court, under oath, why did you approach Courtney? She had a knife. She had a knife. She had a knife.
And that's what
all
you said
three
earlier.
of them.
Yeah.
Right. And the deputy state coroner said, "Where was the knife?" They said, "Beside her." They said, "Where was Courtney looking?" "Down at the ground." They said, "Were all the lights and sirens and blue uniforms and bright yellow taser and live firearm pointing at her and everything? What did Courtney do? Nothing."
Yeah.
Where was she looking? To the ground.
There was no engagement, absolutely no engagement of Courtney with the situation, with the officers.
And then they said, "Why did you approach her then?" If that was her reaction, the knife had to go. The knife had to go. The knife had to go.
Yeah.
That was it.
And I just need to explain to people listening here, you're listening to two grieving parents, but what you guys are saying is not dissimilar to what the findings came out from the inquest.
We were there 9 days, every
We
single
sat
day.
through everything.
For
And
9 days.
That was, in itself, was hell on a number of levels. In terms of, the involved officers, the police and the brass of the police sitting there in their uniforms and everything. That was another whole trauma.
7 days we were given of court time and it had to be extended to 2 extra days.
Yeah. It's a process. Look, guys, I think we'll take a break now, and when we get back, we'll talk about the aftermath, and we'll talk about what happened at the inquest, the process through the inquest, but more importantly, the recommendations that flowed from that inquest and what the coroner's findings were.
Absolutely.
About it, because I think, and I'll say this, it was a difficult position for me as a senior investigator investigating that, because I've got to look at what our policies are and what our procedures are, and technically they've followed procedure there in that an officer can discharge their firearm if they have genuine concern, fear for their safety, protect their life or someone else's. It ticks that boxes, but something felt wrong about what happened to Courtney, and you described in a certain way, Ron and Leesa. I know you've got your views, and it just seemed to go all wrong and just escalate too quickly.
Absolutely.
41 seconds.
That and I think and kudos to the coroner for handing down such strong recommendations. That
we were very grateful for that.
Yeah.
It all along we wanted everybody, the public, that didn't know the nuts and bolts and everything of the situation. We wanted them to know Courtney, that Courtney did nothing wrong. And you said that to us early on in the piece, Gary. And again, it meant the world to us that Courtney had done nothing wrong. And for Courtney's honour and memory to be intact was very important to us. And that's when the findings came out. It meant the world to us.
Did that girl on that footage, did she look like a knife-wielding zombie to you?
No. And that's
No.
and it breaks my heart that you guys would have been going through that, and how the incident was being described and people's perception of it and everything else that goes into play. But look, let's take a break, and we will come back for part 2, and we'll talk about the inquest and what the coroner found and the recommendations.
Yep.
Thank you.
Cheers.